Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
Welcome in, everybody. It's another edition of First and 12 right here on KSL News Radio. Happy Tuesday evening. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry, thanks for jamming with us on another edition of this program. If you miss any part of the show, you can always go back and download the podcast wherever fine podcasts are found. Inside the Big 12 here locally, BYU has a bye this week. Utah goes to Laramie on a COVID promise. Hey, we'll get out there, you guys. Now, it comes to roost. They got to play this game over in Laramie at 72-20.
Last year, I asked Mark Harlan about the Wyoming series when this was at the Big 12 spring meetings, and I asked him about that game specifically because I thought, okay, they're transitioning to a new league. This could be the easy spot to say, getting out of that game, reshuffling the deck. And he said, no, we're going to honor that commitment. I was kind of like, you and BYU, both honoring the commitment to go to 72-20, going to War Memorial. And it was funny, too, the commentary from Witt, just is so classic Wyoming, talking about how his
dad's pants caught on fire.
Yes. Yeah. And only at Wyoming is that going to happen.
It's like, we had the heaters on. What did he say? He's like, we had the flamethrowers. That's what he called them. He goes, well, they weren't the flamethrowers, but they're those heaters. You don't have the flames coming out.
Only in Wyoming.
Fred Sr.'s pants caught on fire. They had to throw water on him, and he goes, that was a bit of a light moment for us. That actually turned out to be one of the better moments for them in Wyoming because you don't have good ones in Wyoming typically.
Well, his other memory would have been probably Joe Glenn flipping the bird.
Oh, yeah, up at Rice Eccles. I mean, yeah, you're up by... You know what? And
Witt goes onside kick up like 40.
It was out of the third quarter. It was out of a score in the third quarter. It was 44-0, and Glenn with the old middle finger salute.
Powder River letter buck, baby.
Old Cowboy Joe. So here's the thing. We were having a discussion last hour about the rankings, and you have a couple different types of rankings. You have the coaches' polls, which the coaches may or may not actually vote in. I don't actually know whether or not they do, but some coaches mention I have them on my ballot is this. They basically ask half of the coaches across FBS to vote every year, and then they just kind of switch it up, and you vote, I think, for 1 or 2 years, and then you don't vote for another couple. And I don't know how exact those are either. If you think that the AP writers or the AP voters who are given that vote, and you have a couple in every market, or more than that in the big ones, right?
Yes.
And
we've got one in Salt Lake.
Right. And is it more accurate to have a coach vote on a poll? If you think people are having a hard time paying attention to their across the country games, coaches are the worst ones to ask. They're all. I mean, my favorite thing is when you see Bronco Mendenhall, who's a head coach now at Utah State. When he was on this, and you see his name on the list, that Bronco Mendenhall's a voter, and he's like, and he's like, I think number 8 who we're playing this week is a good guy. He's a good quarterback, and you're like. What, who? Number 8, you're like, or when he says number 16 is a good player, you're like, that's Arch Manning. I remember, come on.
I remember, that's funny you bring that up because I remember asking some Big 12 basketball coaches in February. Every year, it's a fun media question. Hey, who you got in the Super Bowl tomorrow? Who you got on a Saturday night basketball game? Wait, the Super Bowl's happening? These coaches are just in a cave, and that's basketball.
And you're asking them to vote on all the players. They go, and you know what they do? If you think that it's an incestuous group of writers who are trying to vote, the coaches are like, oh, that's my buddy, man. We used to coach together over at Fill in the Blank Middle School. Whatever. Think about all these coaches have all hired and fired each other. So coaches that should be in the poll, then their team should be in the poll. This guy's like, I'm not voting for him. I hate that guy. Right? If you what's his name? Bill Belichick. If some guy looked at him wrong, he's never going to vote for that team. He won't let you on their campus if they don't like you. So the coaches poll, I don't think it's accurate either. However, here we are talking about it because inside of the coaches poll top 25, in terms of Big 12 teams, you've got Iowa State at 14. You've got Texas Tech at 20. You've got Utah at 21. You've got Arizona State at 24, and you've got BYU at 25. So they have 5.
How about that?
Big 12 teams in the coaches poll. BYU sneaks in right there. Now they're all about around there on the AP poll as well. So I don't know if they cheated off each other's notes or whatever it might be, but how much credence are we supposed to give to this? Early in the season, there's not much. We already know it's easier to make these rankings and actually make them more accurately in week 8. But we're asking people to do it earlier. And a voter just got hit hardcore.
Big time.
One of these AP voters who by the way, all your ballots, what they tell you is when you put your ballot out, everybody's going to see it. And it just so happens that this last week, that one of the voters who I think is in the USC market, isn't she part of the
Southern California News Group?
Okay, so she's in the Southern California News Group. Her name is Haley Sawyer. She put a ballot together. Florida, who lost to USF, and USF is now in the top 25. They're in the top 20, actually. I think they're 19th in the poll because they have beaten their two first opponents that are both ranked in the AP poll.
Boise State and Florida.
And Florida. Not bad wins, so they're obviously deserving of being in that AP poll, at least early. She decided that Florida's performance after she voted them 16th last week merited them to go up to 14th after losing to USF. Here was her explanation on her ballot, and it's kind of a little bit more of a philosophical view on how she does her voting overall.
But as far as what my votes are and what my process is, I wake up early in the morning after covering a game late in the night before. Don't want to go too much into my progress or process or logic, but I will say I appreciate everybody's interaction on social media and all of your feedback. There's tons of people that vote on the AP poll, and it's not a perfect system, but at the end of the day, no matter who you pick, it does even out because there's so many people who vote. And like I said, it's really fun for discussion. It doesn't probably matter in the end, but I'm glad that people are having a really good time with it.
Fun for discussion.
Matter.
Fun for discussion. This is sometimes the lifeblood. Salaries, money is on the line with these rankings and perception of programs. It is not insignificant. And I just think she hit on something there that's interesting where these beat writers, you go in a press box and you got to stay up late. Okay, sorry, your team is playing at 8:30 p.m., sorry, you got to stay up. Again, I brought this up a few times, but I voted in this other poll, the Football Writers Association. Yes. I stayed up till 4:30 a.m. on Sunday to get a feel, watch highlights, to really break down, to put together my top 16. So I felt like I wasn't just blindly ranking. I wanted to watch some highlight packages to really get a feel.
You staying up and watching the games, that's your process. She doesn't really want to get into her process or logic, is what she said.
I don't want to just blindly say, okay, they won. No, I want to try to get a feel for the flow of these games because I saw Clemson barely beat Troy. How did that game play out? What happened there? You just want to kind of deep dive in that. And yes, it's tricky, but these AP voters, I just feel like we've got to get to a point in the sport. If we truly do go to a model that's 16 teams or whatever it ends up being with the playoff, we got to move away from these preseason polls. And that's why, honestly, Alex, I hope we get to a day, and I might be in the minority here, let's get to a 24-team playoff. Because you know what? Then everyone's got access to the thing. And then we don't have to worry about ASU lost to Mississippi State. Now they're done. No, they lost a game. They still have a chance to get back in if it's a 24-team playoff. And then when everyone's in their peak performance, if they can stay healthy, they can let it be played out on the field because individuals like this, even though the AP votes don't have a role in the playoff, it's a perception, and you can't tell me the playoff is not influenced by the AP poll.
No, they see it. And maybe even more so than we think because they're asking people to come in from industries sometimes that have nothing to do with college football. They're like, hey, you're Condoleezza Rice, who used to be the Secretary of State, and you're a super, super smart person, and you like athletics, and you follow it a little bit, and you know how to kind of follow rules, and you'd like to be judicious about this. We'll put you in there. But does that mean she knows more about the game? I don't know. I mean, all these different people who are in this process, and you're exactly right. And I tell people this all the time. The polls don't really matter at the beginning, except for the part where if you're in them early, then that's easier to climb up. And then when you start climbing up, then teams have to pay attention to you. Voters have to pay attention to you. Then the college football playoff, when they come around in week 8, they don't come out of hibernation and don't look at anything. They come into the meeting with the AP polls in their heads. If they say they don't, they're lying.
And the media wants to keep this AP poll because it still gives the media a lot of power, a lot of a voice. And look, I'm all for the media having power. I'm part of it and having a voice.
But don't play with it like a toy. But
you got to take it serious. You have to take it serious. This is a big money business with jobs on the line. Like Billy Napier, they're ready to fire him in Florida, and you're bumping him up 2 spots. Are you kidding me? Come on.
And conversely, you're putting teams not in the top 25 who should be there. And by the way, like you said, most of these coaches have incentives of hundreds of thousands of dollars if they are in the top 25, top 15,
huge.
top 10, top 5. So it makes a big difference. And so you can't just play with it like a toy. All right, we'll take a break. We're gonna still play with this show like a toy though. This is our toy we get to play with on Tuesday nights. We are going to get more into it here. We've got tons to jump into still. If you haven't listened to the podcast, go back, listen to some of these of our podcast segments of this program so you get more informed on the Big 12 every week right here on KSL News Radio when we come back. What's next in the Big 12? Games that matter across the board coming up next week. Stay here, 97.5. No, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM. It is KSL News Radio.